Today is Monday, July 29th, and this is Spring Office Hours Season 3, Episode 27, getting started with Ollama in Spring. My name is Dan Vega, Spring Developer Advocate at Broadcom, joined by my good friend and colleague, DaShaun Carter. DaShaun, how's it going?
It is going wonderful. I am jazzed to be here. It is a great day. It's a great time to be a Spring developer. And things just continue to get, I've been saying it for over 50 episodes now. and now it continues to be the case. It is a great time and it keeps on getting better. So yeah,
somebody reached out to me on Twitter the other day and asked if it was still a good time to be a Java and a Spring developer. I said, if you join our show every week, you would know that it's a great time to be a Java developer. And he pointed out that somebody told him that Java wasn't popular anymore. I said, that person must be a politician because it is that time of year.
The thing is, like, for Java developers, for Spring developers, and today's topic is going to get into this a little bit. Like, I remember the days before Spring. I remember the pain and the struggle of getting things to production with, at that time, it was J2EE, and we were dealing with EJDs. And then I found Spring, and then things became easier. And then there was more joy in what I was doing. But at that same time, as things are getting better for me and I'm getting to production faster, easier, with more joy, everybody, every couple of years, there's a blog post that says Java's dead. This other thing is the new thing, and Java's dead. And we've been hearing that now for like 25 years. So
it's funny you say that. I remember like J2E Development, and it felt a lot like putting a puzzle together without any of the picture of the puzzle. You just kind of had to like put things together and see if they went, and like at the end go, I think this is the puzzle. I think I solved it. Let's see if we solved it. Have somebody look at it and go, I don't know about that. It was not easy. And yeah, Spring kind of took all that away from us. No more trying to set up infrastructure, and just let us do our job. That's all I want to do. I want to build stuff. I don't want to build infrastructure. So
we have a lot of people joining us today, and I want to remind everybody, like, when you say hi, we are so thankful and grateful that you're here in the chat doing it live. And I also want to remind you that my parents are watching, and they get a kick out of seeing where everybody is joining from. So hi, Mom and Dad, I love you. But if you're here and you're in the chat and you can say hi and let us know where you're from. And as always, when you come to my house for dinner, if you leave hungry, that's your fault. When you're here in the chat live and you've got questions about anything, whether it's related to the topic or not, get them ask those questions, because if you don't ask, then that's your fault. We have a great community that shows up live, and your question might get answered in the chat. So bring your questions. Don't leave hungry.
Absolutely. And as a reminder, we do a live stream every Monday from 1 to 2 Eastern, 12 Central. And you can go ahead and catch this replay on the Spring Developer YouTube channel if you want. We also go ahead and turn this into a podcast, so you can get this podcast wherever you get your podcasts from. And as always, if you want to do us a big favor, go out there and leave us a review on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. That really helps us and helps us get the show in front of more individuals like you. So thank you.
And I'm getting a lot of great feedback about the podcast. A lot of people are enjoying it.
Yeah.
I have friends telling me that they're doing it on their drive to work or on their morning walks, and that's great. I love hearing how much it's helped. And I think that we've both been hearing a lot of like, hey, yeah, we want to hear this topic, and it's been great. You know, some people are doing it as a team, where they're kind of like spending the time to watch the episode as a team, as like a bonding chit chat about things. So yeah, it's great. I love hearing.
Well, I mean, selfishly, Deshaun, we do this so that me and you can just hang out for an hour every week and block this off on our calendar.
It's my favorite time of the week, and I'll be honest, like I like these kind of episodes where we have this new exciting toy, and we've both been playing with it, and we just get to kind of talk about what we've learned and what we've seen. I love these kind of shows.
Absolutely. So yeah, we'll be talking about getting started with Ollama in spring. If you're not sure what Ollama is, or AI, or any of that, we'll kind of dive into that today. Before we get started, though, just kind of catching up with you, Deshaun, what have you been up to? What have you been doing lately?
Well, it's surprise, it has been based a lot around AI, but we have a big conference coming up, and I know it feels like it's still a month away, but there's a lot going on. I'm putting a lot. I want this to be my best conference ever. I have a handful of sessions. I'm going to be doing some cool special events outside and around the conference. So I'm 100% focused on this conference, and what I'm doing is spending time trying to make some fancier demos. I'm exploring and learning. I'm doing a little bit of a deep dive on Cloud Foundry, and specifically Karifi. I'm still, even though that's not the topic that I'm presenting on, I am enjoying Karifi, how much I can get done, and how I can stand it up and shut it down. So I'm going to pivot here a little bit. Like, we both love test containers. And I can take test containers, and I can stand up a K3S. I can stand up a Kubernetes with K3S. I can throw some Karifi on it, and then I can have a Git push or a CF push. I can have this kind of cool workload. So I'm building kind of I'm building this interesting. I'm frozen.
You're good now.
All right. I'm building some interesting stuff around my demos, and I'm excited about it.
Nice. Yeah, we're actually, speaking of Spring One and AI, we're actually on a panel with the great Dr. Mark Pollack. We're doing a panel on AI there, so we get, I think, 45 minutes. I don't know if it's 25 or 45, but we get a little bit of time to just sit there and geek out and talk about AI and answer questions. So that's going to be a lot of fun.
Indeed. Oh, my display has gone wonky, so give me just a sec.
No problem. I just want to, I'll throw up a comment here. It says, thank you, Dan, for your recent videos. Video. I actually did 2 last week. I was going to mention that. Last week I spent some time, now that I finally got caught up on some things, putting 2 videos out there. One was looking at all the clients available in Spring, because I got a lot of questions around like which one should I reach for, the REST template, the web client, the REST client, HTTP interfaces, and there are a lot of options. So I did a pretty quick video in the sense of the term quick. It was kind of like 30 minutes, but we talked about where all those clients came from, why they were added, and then when to kind of reach for them. So that was a lot of fun. And then I did a video on a new feature in Spring Framework 6.2 Milestone 5, which is the ability to support rendering of multiple fragments. So if you use something like HTMX, before 6.2 Milestone 5, you can only return a single fragment, which is fine. Like most of the time, I need to return like that chunk of HTML. But when you want to do something like an out of bounds swap, and I need to like return this fragment and then maybe like display the order total in the cart, Those are two things that need to come back. And the only way to do that before this was using a library. A couple of the community supporters out there have libraries to do this. I looked at William DeBelau's library, HTMX with Spring Boot, and you could do that in there. But you had to bring in another library just to do that. So now Spring has the ability to return a collection of model and views. So now I could say, here's the 2 fragments that I want to return. And I did a whole video on that turned out, I thought, really well. So and again, I love, I don't know if this ever comes across, because I don't make videos to like get subscribers on YouTube, and I certainly don't make money off of it. Like, it's not a lot of money. It's enough to like put back into the channel, right? I do it because like selfishly, like I want to learn something, and then I happen to love like teaching other people about it. So that was one of those things. Like I saw it in the release notes, and I'm like, I want to learn that. I'm gonna go learn that. So I went and learned it. I worked up an example of it, because just reading it is not enough. Like I want to see it in action. And I had a lot of fun doing that. And I was like, all right, let's make a video about this.
And that's the thing, you know, a lot of times we get asked like, hey, how do I go and learn these things? How do I keep up? You have, I believe, for me to learn it and to understand it, what we both have to do is we have to get our hands on these things. We have to build things, and we have to run into things. Like we have to be like, oh, here's a gap in the documentation. Oh, here's what I understand. Oh, I read that wrong. We have to do that in order to do our job, in order to help you get to production. That's what we're doing. That's why we make these videos. I wish that I would spend a little bit more time making more videos, because I sure do love your videos too. All that work.
I appreciate it.
There are a lot of really cool new features coming out of Spring Engineering, and yeah, what a great time. It is amazing.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. So why don't we get going? I'm just looking. Do we have any...
There is a good question, like to kind of kick things off right here. Like, hey, does Spring have any example code projects available in which LLMs are integrated using Ollama or LM Studio? Well, the topic of today's show is Ollama.
Let's see if we don't answer. I'm pretty sure we'll answer that throughout the course of today's topic. So let me do something. Let me share my screen. I just want to talk about something really quick, because we mentioned it earlier. And again, DaShaun and I run this show. We don't take guidance from anyone. So the higher ups are not telling us to promote Spring One. We just happen to be there, and we want to make sure that you know about this. So Spring One is coming to you. And for those of you who are not going to be in Vegas, you can sign up for the live stream for free. So you can watch.
You can register. You have to register in order to get a link.
Exactly. So you got to sign up.
You can register now.
Yeah. Sign up. Get on the live stream. You'll be able to watch the keynote, which DaShaun and I are both involved in. That's going to be really exciting. You'll get to catch a lot of the sessions from the Code Theater there. Or from the Spring Theater there. So that's going to be a lot of fun. So do us a favor. We're putting a lot of work into this. We're excited to deliver it. So go ahead and sign up for the live stream.
It's going to be amazing.
Of course it is. It's going to be awesome. All right. I'm sharing my screen. For those of you listening on the podcast, we are at ollama.com. That's OLLAMA.com. This is a project to get up and running with large language models locally, right? So, DaShaun, tell us a little bit about Ollama. What kind of got you interested in this particular project?
I like Ollama because I like... there was a good quote, and I'm trying to remember who it was from. The quote was, Ollama is like Docker, but for LLMs. I fire up Ollama and I say, hey, I don't want to run in Nginx Docker. I want to run Llama 3. And it stands it up and it runs it so I can execute it and I can be inside and use and leverage that LLM. Ollama is to LLMs like Docker is to containers. And I loved the way that it was said. It was Edu.
Yes, Edu. It was. I remember that.
And it was just like chef's kiss. It was perfect. So that's the way I explain it. And what Ollama has done is for all of my computers, including my Raspberry Pis, I can run these LLMs on these small devices. And if they don't have a GPU, that's okay. It'll take a while. 30 or 40 seconds on a Raspberry Pi, but I can still use it and leverage it. And that's amazing. So this idea, one of the things that this idea, it's access to AI and to these LLMs is made really, really simple when you have Ollama in one hand and you have Spring AI in the other. And that has been a core of the conversations that I've been having over the last few weeks. It is an easy path. If you feel like you're getting left behind or you want to dig in, or you want to get hands-on and build things, Ollama in one hand, Spring AI in the other hand, let's go.
All right, so let's kind of step back though. So we talked about Ollama being able to run some of these large language models locally, but we have all these really great LLMs out there. OpenAI's GPT, Google's Gemini, Claude's Sonnet 3.5. Like there are a lot of great models out there that we can run from our browser. Why would I want to install this locally and download this really large file and have to have all of this processing power to process it when I could just do it in the public?
A lot of our friends, their business work, the enterprise corporation that they work for is not allowing them to use these LLMs in a browser because some things can happen, right?
Yeah.
When you're using those, they are then training the models based on the information that you're sending.
Yeah.
And there's rules and guidance, but to be safe, maybe let's not do all of our R&D using third parties LLMs. Let's keep it local. And if your laptop or whatever has blocked access to Claude or blocked access to OpenAI, you can still run these things locally and not get left behind. So this is the big value that, hey, one, I want to be a little bit more secure. I want to be a little safe with what I'm doing. And two, I want to be able to do it. I want to be able to do things locally, period.
Yep. So we actually ran into this. We were in Toronto giving a workshop on AI, and we were set to use OpenAI's GPT 4.0 and got a notification that, hey, we can't use that here. It's blocked on the VPN. So I was like, all right, well, you can connect to your phone and try to use it there, or we'll have to use something like Ollama. And you were in the corner downloading Ollama, getting it up and running.
And then I exposed it. I exposed it on my laptop on the same network so that everybody could use it. Not everybody did, but we had a few people that would connect to my laptop, and there you go.
And so what I'm hearing, and I think this is really good, in a business enterprise use case, this is really great because we're not sending all of our data to one of these public LLMs, right?
Right.
If I'm just a consumer and I'm just playing with it at home, then maybe using one of these ChatGPT is fine, right? Because I'm not really sending all my stuff. But if I want to really, we talk about RAG a lot, being able to augment the LLM with some data. And I have all these private documentation. I don't want to send it out to ChatGPT because I don't know what GPT is doing with it, right? So this is a really good use case to test the waters there and see how it works. Absolutely. without kind of running into a security risk.
Yeah.
So cool.
Security, maybe that's we only gave a couple of reasons, but security is kind of a big one.
Yeah, it's a huge one. I think it's number one with everything AI, right? It's everything that we talk about when it comes to AI.
But just like Docker running on your laptop, Ollama can run multiple LLMs at the same time.
Yep.
So locally, I have multiple LLMs, and because I'm using Spring AI, I don't have to change code. I can just change a couple of properties, and I can switch back and forth between these different LLMs on my laptop or on my Raspberry Pi.
So let's talk about this. So when you go to Ollama.com, there's a way to download it. So I download it on my machine. There's options for macOS, Linux, and Windows. I download it, and essentially what I get is a command line interface to Ollama. And if you go into, when you install it, the instructions say, hey, there's a default model of Llama 3. Here's how you can run this. You could say, Ollama, run, and then give it a model. So if you go on the website here and look under models, there's a list of models here. And these are all the different models that you can run. These are all I think I'm right here, but these are all open source models, right? Or are they not?
Yes, they are all
Okay,
open source
so these are
models.
all open source models. So what happens is you have to pick a model. So I think I have this on my screen here. So what I can do is I can go in the command line and say Ollama run, and then I give it the model name. The one that I've downloaded already is Ollama 3.1. And then what I'll do is if you don't have it, it'll actually pull it down for you. Now we'll talk about that in a second because size matters. Like this is when we pull these large language models down, that's going to be something you need to think about. But here I can just ask it a question. Tell me a dad joke about dogs. That's my go-to because I like a good dad joke. And there's the answer. So I could actually turn the Wi-Fi off right now. I'm not going to because it would break the stream, but I can turn that off, and everything I'm doing is now locally, which is really, really cool. Now, if you pick a model, if you go into these models and like jump into Llama 3.1, it'll tell you like what models are available here under the drop down. You can see that there are 3 different models here with 3.1, 8B, which is 4.7 gigabytes, 70B, which is 40 gigabytes, and 405B, which is 231 gigabytes.
I just pulled down the 405B.
You did?
Yes.
Wow. I don't know that if you run this, so that was the next thing I was going to talk about. You're going to need certain compute power to be able to run these. The 8B I can run fine on my laptop. This 405B, I think you need at least 128 gigs of RAM to run this.
Oh,
you could probably run it, but it might be really, really slow.
Yeah, I mean, and that's okay, right?
Yeah,
that's okay. Like for me and what I'm doing, I can wait 30 seconds. I can wait 40 seconds. I do have some access. The other piece here is if you've got access to GPUs, and now I'm going to say this, and it doesn't have to be the NVIDIA GPUs. It also has the support for other AMD-based GPUs as well. I will get that experiment done soon, and I'll keep you posted. But if you have access to GPUs, you can choose to enable the GPUs. And you can explain, you can give it some configurations on how you want to enable those GPUs. So if you have access, you can go. But again, you don't have to have a GPU to run these models.
Right. Yeah. And so I got a comment here in the live stream. Is there a repo which you can point us to help get started?
I'm going to tell you. No, I don't want you to answer. I'm going to answer because you'll be humble. I'm going to tell you that Dan's AI workshop, which is publicly available, this is my favorite answer for this because I like the way that he set it up. So you have tons of examples here that actually go into a bunch of the different flavors and features within Spring AI. So that's the repo I want you to check out. And yeah, I want you to get started.
My answer though was going to be, hey, we're not even into code yet. With Ollama, all we've done is download it. It's a CLI tool, right? And then we gave it a model. So I'm saying, Ollama, I want you to run. Here is the model that you're going to use. And as DaShaun pointed out, I'm using 3.1, but there's a whole bunch of models here, right? Let me get this out of the way. So you can go down and use something like Mistral. You can use, so there's all these different like specific models that you can use. And you might want to look through these and maybe you have like a certain use case for it. I saw like an R-based one. Like if you're just running like R, you can just use that. Maybe there's a Python specific one, right? So there's all these different models that you can use depending on the use case that you want to use them. And the nice thing is if you have the disk space, you can download a few of them, right? And switch between them. Like this time I'm using Llama 3.1. Next time I might be using something like Mistral. So right now, that's all we've done.
And that's the first gotcha. If you're using Ollama, the default model is Llama 3. But with Spring AI, I think the Ollama starter is defaulted to Mistral. So that's the first gotcha. Again, these things move fast, but that's the first gotcha I want you to be aware of. Make sure you're matching up the LLMs that are running with the LLM model that you're calling.
So another comment here, I've got no experience in this, but is it similar to Hugging Face? Yeah, so Hugging Face has like a repository of all the different models that you can pull down. I haven't run Hugging Face locally, but I know if I go to huggingface.io, I can look and see like all of the models out there. So I'm not sure if it's similar to that, but
Similar, yes.
cool.
The answer is yes.
We have all these. So the other thing I wanted to point out, and the reason I chose Llama 3.1 is because I heard, let me just find this. I saw this that came out last week. Mark Zuckerberg was on the tour of talking about open source LLMs, and I thought this was really cool. So Llama 3.1 came out last week, and again, we saw the different versions, the 8B, the 70B, and the 405B. And there is a blog post over on ai.meta.com that talks about this particular model, and there's some really interesting benchmarks on how it kind of stacks up against some of the best LLMs in the world, right? But for me, the difference is like this is open source, and they also put somewhere, I can't remember where, but it's part of their I don't know, release notes or somewhere in there saying that like if you wanted to take this and use it to train smaller models, then you can do so. So if you want to create your own like fine-tuned specific model, you can use some of these models to do that. And I thought that was
amazing.
really interesting. Yeah.
Our friend Jonathan's here, and he says, have you tried running this in Docker? There are images on Docker Hub. So there are Ollama Docker images on Docker Hub. So that you can go and you can run the Ollama image, but remember, Ollama is just the interface to run the other LLMs. So when I said, hey, I just downloaded the 405B, I'm doing that inside of Docker. So my Docker image is running Ollama, and then I say, hey, Docker image, go and run the Llama 3.1 405B, and it goes and it pulls that down and it puts it into my local volume. So when I start and stop that Docker image, it's still there when I start it back up. So yes, you can use this. And when I'm doing it on my Raspberry Pis, I like having that interface. Now, I bet you're thinking like, what about if I've got to go and download it? Like, is there any way for me to save those images? Yes. So this is one of those kind of next steps when you're testing and you're doing these things in a path to production. You don't want to have to download those LLMs all the time. So what you can do is, hey, I want to use the 405B, download it inside of your Ollama container, and then store that container with the LLM already installed. And then you can save that into your Docker Hub and your local registry, and you can use that the next time so you don't have to continuously download those models as you're going to production. Testing is really interesting. And we always get the question like, how do you test these things?
Right.
We'll get into that a little more later.
All right. So the next thing I wanted to show, we downloaded it. We're running Llama 3.1, but I'm doing everything from a command line. And I don't know, some people are okay with that. Some people want a nice UI interface like ChatGPT, right? So I wanted to show this off. I just came across this, which is a project called Open Web UI. So if you go down there, this is formerly known as Ollama Web UI.
Can you put the chat or put that URL into the chat?
Yes. Let me do that now.
And I just saw this last week for the first time too. And I was like, wow, that looks really familiar.
Yeah. So it does give you that kind of chat GPT interface to a large language model. So especially with something like Ollama, we have all those different LLMs we can do. We can actually pick it. So one way that you can install this, especially if you're running it on your local machine, is using Docker. So I have Docker. I have Ollama running on my local machine. Here is something you can copy. You can run it. And at the end of the day, I get this nice interface here. Let me refresh this. That I can come in here and pick the different models. So I only have 3.1 installed, but you can pick a different one, set a default, and then start chatting. So I can come in here and give it a new chat, and I get this nice interface, which is
so
really
does
cool.
The UI allow you to install new models on your Ollama instance?
So I don't think so.
Okay.
I think this is
But
pulling the list of models that I've installed using Ollama.
Okay, still, that's awesome.
Yeah. So here's something else I really love about this. So if I come in here, even if I went to something like Meta AI, right? This Meta.ai is using Llama 3.1 behind the scenes. I can ask it questions, but I can't provide my own documentation, which limits me in certain things, right? So I'm going to ask it a question. Can you provide me a code snippet of how to use the REST client in Spring Boot 3.2, right? So now I'm using the 8B model. So it probably doesn't, it's not trained on the entire internet, and it has a cutoff date, right? So if I go use this, it's actually going to do a little bit of hallucinations, right? It thinks it can figure this out, but like the answer that I'm getting is not what I'm looking for because it doesn't have data on the REST client. It doesn't know how to use it. But here's something I can do here. I can go into this interface now and attach documents. So I have in my downloads somewhere, let me find this. I have a Spring Docs. Yeah. So I can come in here and I can grab a resource. So I did this AI video on using basically being able to add a document to that using RAG. And what I did is use the actual Spring Boot documentation, the reference docs, the whole PDF. So what it's doing now is it's uploading that PDF, and now it's going to use that as context. So normally when we're talking about like these public LLMs, right, we're paying for them. And we don't want to send these entire 1,000-page PDFs to them every time as context, right? That's not going to be very good because we're going to pay for that. Well, this is just a local file that I'm adding as context to something I'm not paying for anyway. So now I can come in here and ask that same question. It has that document as a reference right in this like nice UI, this nice interface. And now it's going to give me like,
This is amazing.
It didn't do it this time. So yeah, it's not doing it again. But I did a test on this, and it actually gave me the REST client because it was reading from the documentation, which was really cool. So, yeah, here I have an example of that. Yeah,
the point
so
that you bring up, like we talked about security, right? But then there's also the cost, right?
Yeah.
One of the use cases that popped up on my radar last week is the cost. If you're doing these things at scale, if you've got a library of PDFs. Following this example, and you want to use those PDFs as additional information for the LLM to use. If those PDFs are megabytes and you're doing this, n number of times a day, that adds up when you're sending it up to these public interfaces, and you're paying per token. What's the token again?
Yeah, token. And then you have to think about context windows, right? Like how large are those context windows? Now there are things you can do to kind of fix that problem, right? Like when we talk about RAG, retrieval augmented generation, we can do some things, especially in Spring AI, very easily. Instead of sending that whole document, we do like a similarity search and just give me the things that are relevant and send those in the context window. So we're not sending 1,000-page PDF every time because you wouldn't want to do that. So cool stuff. I mean, again, we haven't even talked about Spring AI yet. We're just talking about Ollama, using these models. We can do it from the command line. We can do it from this nice UI that looks familiar to all of us who've been using these different LLMs. So
we can be more secure.
Pretty cool.
And we can save a boatload of money.
Yep.
Things that I really, they're high on my list.
Yep.
So there's a great question here. Daniel says, this is great. How can I check the minimum hardware requirements to run different models? I think it's defined. I think they kind of give a recommendation, but I'm here to tell you, because I'm your friend, you don't have to invest in a lot of hardware. A lot of these models will run on a Raspberry Pi. They won't run quickly. I mean, don't take a Raspberry Pi to production, but for you to explore and start moving forward, you can run it on your laptop. In most cases, if it can run on an 8 gigabyte Raspberry Pi, that's my baseline. An 8 gigabyte Raspberry Pi runs most of these models slowly, but it does run. So
let's use what we have to try and answer that question, right? I clicked on Llama 3.1. I clicked on model, and if you click on model, it kind of gives you a breakdown of what this model is. There's a whole bunch of like jargon in here that I'm not going to pretend to understand, but let's see if we can't grab all of this, right? I'm going to go a little bit more. So I'm just grabbing, for the you at home listening on the podcast, I'm just grabbing all of this data. And what I'm going to do is come back over here
and ask
and say,
Fantastic idea.
are the minimum requirements to run this model? And I'm going to paste that in. Let's see what it says. Oh, model not select. Oh, that's why. Yeah. Because every time you select a new chat in this web UI, you have to pick the model, but you can also set this as a default, which I didn't do yet. So now I'm going to go ahead and ask it. So it looks like you're using a pretty large one. All right. I didn't get an answer I'm really interested in. So let's try ChatGPT. Maybe that will give me an answer. Again, ChatGPT has more, this is a larger model that has more data. So it does see that it's Meta Llama 3.1b. I don't have an answer for that. So various types, detailed information. Let's just say, how much RAM should I have? So minimum RAM, you would likely need at least 16 to 32 gigabytes of RAM for the different tasks. So yeah, you can go through and start asking questions like this, and how much disk size should I use? I know I don't need a GPU, but if I had a GPU,
it's all trade-offs, right?
How much quicker? Yeah, right. So
cool. Again, Balaji, thanks for the question. Can we run two models at the same time? Yes, you can. Again, resources matter, and it depends on the size of the model. But with Ollama, you can run multiple models at the same time, and simply select which model you want to speak to.
So we can, in Ollama, we can download two different models. But when we run Ollama, you have to say, I'm using Llama 3.1, right?
Nope, they're all running in the background. So you can do the Ollama list, and you can see which models are available. And then when you make your query, as part of the request, you're specifying which model that you're talking to.
Right. Okay, cool.
So this is another question that comes up always. Okay, you've got this generalized LLM, but what about, how do I use this for the stuff that I'm doing? My business case, my business domain. How do I do that? Can I do that? Do I need to do that? What does that look like? And I think we talked about it.
Yeah, being able to, especially these local models, now you have an opportunity to fine tune these. Whereas, some of the public models, you're not going to get that chance. Now, I know there's different models out there that allow you to do that, but this is probably a much easier way to do fine tuning. Now, the question becomes do you need to fine tune a model, or do you just need to provide context to the model for your specific use case?
And I'll be honest, that's where I'm at. Yeah. I can go and spend a bunch of time doing the fine tuning, or the continuous fine tuning that we're starting to hear more of, or I can just figure out how to provide the right context to the existing model for my use case. Just like your PDF. I don't have to go and do any fine tuning of the model. I can give it the relevant information I want it to use, and I can get high value back.
Right.
So I'm not leaning into fine tuning. That's my answer. I'm leaning into
I agree.
Improving the way I'm using the retrieval augmented generation and the functions.
Another question here. I've asked this question before, but it didn't get an answer. Is there a way to extract Spring Docs into a single file? I can't find a way to do this since I switched to Antora. I don't think there is. I believe I asked this question too. I don't know of a way to do that. The single PDF that I got was from a previous version of the docs where there was actually an option to get this single PDF. So I don't know of a way to grab this yet. And I was thinking the same thing. So I went off to some other projects that I use, and I wanted to pull down a PDF from their documentation, and I couldn't do it there either. I was using Raycast, and I wanted to use that example in an LLM example. and I couldn't pull their docs down either. So I would like to be able to do that. I don't know of one way to do that. DaShaun, have you done that?
I'm looking right now, but my computers aren't behaving. But I believe that there is. I think there is a single page generated inside of the GitHub docs, inside of the GitHub repos,
Okay.
documents repos. But yeah, I'm trying to like make sure that the stream continues. So I'm not going to explore that, but yeah, stay tuned. I'll help you, and I'll say look for a Twix. I will follow up with an answer to that.
All right, cool. Cool. So we've talked about Ollama. Let's talk about where Spring comes into play, right? We have the Spring AI project. We've talked about it a lot on the show before. An easy way to get up and running with different LLM providers using the same kind of code, right? Gives you that portable abstraction. So if you go into the documentation and you go to the chat model API, we've done a lot of examples with like OpenAI, with Google Gemini. But if you look down that list, you'll see Ollama. So Ollama is in there, Ollama chat. It shows you how to get started. The prerequisites are the things that we just did. You need to install Ollama on your machine. You need to have a model pulled down. So if you just install Ollama and you don't pull a model down, then you're not going to be able to have a model running. So you got to say something like Ollama run Llama 3 or Llama 3.1, and that will pull that down locally on your machine. Once you do that, where should you go? You know where. Start.spring.io. You can fill in your data about the project. You can come in here and say this is going to be a web project, and then just select Ollama. Ollama is going to give you that starter. Once that's in place, nothing changes. Everything is the same as if we were using OpenAI's GPT. You'll have to set a property that says like, hey, this is the model that I'm using. This is the one that I download, because there's all those different models you could be using. This is the model that we're going to use. And yeah, again, the code doesn't change. Like, hey, we're just using a chat client. Here's the prompt that I want to send it. Give me a string break.
So I want to do a big shout out
really
to
cool.
Adib for pointing this out for me. Is like, I can have literally the same code base. And one of the capabilities that we have with Spring is I can say, hey, I want to run a different profile. I want to pass in some information. I want to run a different profile inside of Spring. So I can just have my Palm set up or my Gradle set up, and I can say, hey, now Spring, now I want you to do this against OpenAI. And then same code, restart, I want you to do it against Llama 3. Same code, restart, do it against, Claude. And all you have to do is set up those profiles, setting up the Maven profile so you get the right dependencies, but then setting up your Spring profiles so you're running against the right set of dependencies. Man, that's awesome. That's big time.
So cool.
Makes it super easy.
Yeah, so we could have like all these different property files in here, one for OpenAI, one for Ollama, one for Gemini, and even right in your application, you can come in and just say, hey, if you're using something like IntelliJ, you can come in and say edit configuration, and then you can give it an active profile. Boom, we switched over to that. Again, same code. That for me is the real powerful thing, because so many things are changing in this AI space. And we want to test the different large language models, the public ones, the local ones that we're using, to see what is going to give us the best result for our specific use case. So this is great.
Yeah, the responses that you get back, all of these models are not the same. They all have different strengths and weaknesses. They all handle things a little bit different. The language that they return is a little bit different. And it's worthwhile checking out the different LLMs and see which ones work for your use case specifically.
Yep.
For example, multimodal. Most of these LLMs handle chat really, really well. Some of these LLMs can also handle other types of interface, like images, but not all of them handle images. So some of these models, I can say, hey, here's an image. What do you see?
Right. That's pretty cool.
Amazing. Some of these models, we can send in audio. We can send in MP3 or a WAV file, and we can say, transcribe this.
Transcribe this. And now, hey, give me the 3 takeaways from this podcast today, and give me a summary, a 1 to 2 sentence summary of what what this podcast was about. Pretty cool stuff.
And while you're at it, just translate it to a different language.
Yeah. So many
What?
cool things.
So yeah,
um, so the other thing I wanted to point out with Spring AI and Ollama. So last week, Ollama released a feature to support function calling. So this is really big in other LLMs like OpenAI's GPT with Gemini. A lot of the big LLMs, they support functions or tools. And this is a way to get access to real-time data or do real-time things, right? So the classic example is if I'm asking, hey, where's the Olympics right now in 2024? It's in Paris, France, right? What if I asked, like, what is the current weather like in Paris, France? The LLM is going to go, I have no idea. I can guess based on some
I can
data
make something up for sure.
I can make something up, but the real-time data, I don't have access to that. So you can provide function calls to basically say, hey, LM, if you are coming across a question like this, and you could provide some like description to it, I have a way to get that answer for you. So basically when you call the LLM, now it goes, I can't answer that, but I see you have a function that you can call. I'm going to pass this back to you. You call this function, and now I have access to this data. So now you can say, what's the weather like in Paris? We call like a public weather API to get that data, and it just works. Some other examples are like, hey, what if you're internal and you are asking the LLM like, hey, how many customers do we have on product ABC, right? You can't do that publicly because they don't have access to your CRM. But internally, you can call a function from a service to another microservice to get that data for you. So you could start asking and answering questions about things that are going on inside of your enterprise. So the cool thing about this was Ollama added this support last week, and immediately Spring AI added support for this in Spring AI. So with Ollama in Spring AI, we have function calling now, which is really cool to see.
It's so cool. And this is where we get, right? It was whose question, Daniel's or Kaldeep's? Like, I don't have to train these models. I can now augment those calls. I can say, hey, here's a REST API to my inventory. Can you give me some answers? Here, and then this is kind of my favorite use case is I can feed the model Dan Vega's search history, Dan Vega's purchase history, and I can just say, hey model, based on everything else that you know going on, the last month of sales, of my products, what should I recommend to Dan Vega?
Right.
And I could also say, what should I recommend to Dan Vega if I want to optimize inventory, if I want to optimize profit? I can give it all of these constraints. So my recommendation engine can be even more powerful with the help of these LLMs. I don't have to make a recommendation for each one of those optimizations that I want. I can let the LLM do that.
Yep, and I just wanted to point this out. So the support for function calling in Ollama just hit the snapshot version. So it's not in milestone 1. It's not in a milestone. So it's in a snapshot. So if you want to use it, you got to use 1.0.0 snapshot. But I was telling you before the show, I moved my example from my Spring AI workshop into this project that I just started up using Llama 3.1 at verbatim, and it just works. So I didn't have to change anything. It just works as expected, and that was really cool to see. So.
Yeah, here's a great question, and I have a repository with the answer, but I don't remember which model. So it says, for translation work, OpenAI's Whisper is open source and can be used locally. Can Spring AI perform translation work using a local model without calling the OpenAI API? And I think I have a translation example. So let me do a quick search. I'm going to try. Cool. And the idea, there's a lot of these models that can do translation. And if the model can handle translation, then you can go. Whisper, I think, is the transcription, right? Not necessarily the translation. Whisper does the transcription, and then the model can handle the translation. So if you can get the transcription done, a lot of these models can handle. And there's some on the Ollama model library, some of those have been trained with more languages. They have more support. Again, there are multiple models and there's new models being introduced to the ecosystem every week. So taking the time to understand and figure out where these models live, someplace like Ollama is going to help you, and you can kind of see the options in Ollama's website. You can kind of see what these models do, how they're trained, and what features they have.
All right, so here's a good question. So is this like fine-tuning your prompts, aka prompt engineering, but in code, or does it apply to both? So let's kind of back up on this fine-tuning. So when we talk about like generative AI, when we talk about machine learning, a subset of that is deep learning, when we talk about how this works, the way that fine-tuning works at a large language model level is there's kind of human intervention to say like, hey, this response to this question was off a little. You need to like, this is how you should respond to it, right? So in the machine world, in the machine learning world, where everything is basically labeling an input or giving it an input and labeling the output. So I show it through pictures of me. I say, this is me, this is Dan, this is Dan. I give it a picture that has no label. It should be able to determine that that was Dan, right? Well, on the other side of that, when we talk about like generative AI, we are giving it a bunch of inputs and we are asking it to generate the output. So fine-tuning is fine-tuning that output, like saying, hey, that response to that question, we can tune that a little. So fine-tuning is more at the large language model level, right? When we talked about it before, yes, we can get better responses through better prompts, aka prompt engineering. We could set system level messages. We can be very specific with the message that we're sending to the model. So those are some things there. And then, as we said, to get a response that a LLM may not have an answer to, we can augment it. So the example that I said, a year ago was, what are the sports in the 2024 Summer Olympics in Paris? It doesn't know the answer to that. It can sure try to come up with one. It will figure out based on past Olympics, here are some sports that I think are in the 2024 Olympics. It didn't know that breakdancing was added to the Olympics, so it wouldn't have added that, right? But if we gave it a list and we gave it context, then it could answer that. So yeah, there are a bunch of different options to doing so. Just depends on what you need to do. And as DaShaun said, I'm not in that world of fine tuning. I don't know if that's more from a data scientist standpoint, but I haven't done that before.
So here's the thing. If I fine tune a model for a specific outcome, then I'm saying, hey, I want to lean this way. And it changes all of the other outcomes that you want. So with these generalized LLMs, I can say, hey, system, I want you to respond as if you're an advertising agent and you know exactly what good marketing looks like, and we're looking for something that's catchy and flashy for a 30-second spot on the Super Bowl. I want you to answer that way. But using that same model, I can say, hey, system, you are a football coach and you are running up against this defense, and here's the plays that they run, and I want you to tell me what I should run for the first play of the game and respond this way. And on top of that, with both of these generalized models, we can say, I want the output structured in this way so that I can use it in my other systems. So I can feed it to my inventory system or my commercial processing system or the coach's headset and iPad that's down on the field. I can use these things using the same model, but if I fine tune it, if I say lean this way, then I'm pulling away from the other use cases. The benefits of these models and all the things that are being put into these models is that they're being trained on more and more information. Yep. And the answers are there. You just got to ask. And if the answer's not there, we can feed it. And you asked about prompt engineering, what Spring AI does. This idea that I can say, hey, use this PDF as part of your answer. That's prompt engineering. We're stuffing the prompt. We're saying, use this resource to help with your answer. So this is falls under the prompt engineering piece on how we make it easy for you to do retrieval augmented generation. Use these LLMs along with the data that you have easily to get the data in the format that you want.
Mm-hmm. All right, I got another question here. Can you recommend a model for RAG type development to augment search systems? So again, when it comes to RAG, you are providing your own documents, right? The big question here today is, what is the use case? Is it for inside your enterprise and you have private documents that you don't want to share with the public? Well, then, hey, what we've done here today will work. Using something like Ollama, running something like Llama 3.1 on a local machine where you can augment it with your own private documents and not send it out to the public, this will work out well. If you don't care that it's public, there are some great options out there. ChatGPT is one of them. I've been having a lot of fun with Claude's 3.5 Sonnet, especially for coding tasks. I feel like I get better results from some of the things I'm trying to do. And again, this is what DaShaun and I talked about. You have to try different LLMs based on what you're doing to get a different result, right? And so with something like this, you can come in here and add context. You can go in and like add your own PDS this and then ask it a question. One thing I've been working on was being able to like generate a blog post from a YouTube video of mine. And what I could do is I could add context. I could say, here are all the blog posts I've ever written. So it understands my tone and what I'm trying to do in those blog posts. Instead of just trying to generate a blog post from a transcription, now it has like the overarching theme of what I'm trying to do and my tone. So yeah, adding context is really big when it comes to some of the things that we're trying to do to generate new ideas.
Absolutely. And one of the things that I've noticed, a fun thing that I've noticed, is how you lean into Claude. I think you just said that's kind of your go-to for code. I've noticed that different people have like different favorite LLMs. If they've experimented with a bunch of the LLMs, because the language that comes back, right, the way that they are generating their text, some of them are more like system-y, some of them are more friendly, some of them have more like pleases and thank yous, and different people lean into the different models, the default models, and how they respond. And I found that interesting.
It's funny you say that about language. We were reviewing an abstract the other day for somebody who'd submitted to a conference, and the word delve was in there. And we're like, nope, that's the no. We know that was written by somebody. The machine, not by somebody.
So yeah, like it's fun. But the other piece about the search, I have implemented search in dozens, safely I can say dozens of different ways, using Elasticsearch, using Solar, Lucene, all these other, I've implemented, or just regular like database indexing. I've implemented search in many, many ways. One of the underlying things that we make easy is using these vector databases, taking the data that you've got and vectorizing it and giving you the ability to do similarity search. And just having that similarity search with a vector database, it's a 95% of the way of most other search systems that I've done, right? I'm not going to do an exact word or have the binary or, type matching that I have to do. I can just say, hey, find me a picture that looks like Dan. And I can do that with these. So we have so many capabilities because of the vector database technology that's underlying a lot of these systems. The search use case has become so easy and so much faster because of the vector databases alone. Add on to that these LLMs, so you can make like recommendations against that data. It's a whole new ballgame.
And Spring AI makes this so easy. You can just pass in an advisor. We have one called a question and answer advisor. And you just say, here's my vector store, and boom. Now you just start asking questions against it, and it will provide that functionality, that similarity search, without you having to write all that code, which is really cool. All right, I got another question here that I want to address.
I like this one.
Python and LangChain are widely used in AI. Is there a way to easily use useful Python libraries in Spring AI through GraalVM. I've tried it, but it wasn't easy enough to actually use. So I wanna address one thing before we answer that. I've talked about this a lot when we get into AI development, right? When you understand like that there are these large language models out there. These are the models that have been developed using machine learning, using deep learning, using data scientists, using a lot of these libraries out there that train these models over and over and refine them and fine tune them. At the end of the day, though, what we end up with is something like OpenAI's GPT-4o, right? Now we can all leverage this through a REST API call. So there's two sides of this. There's building these LLMs, fine-tuning them, and getting them available, putting them out into the public. And the other side of this is just being a consumer of these LLMs. So I think when it comes to consumers of LLMs, every language is a consumer now. It's not just Java. It's not just Python. You can do it in JavaScript. You can do it in Rust. Whatever language you're using, you can hit a REST API. But when you want to start building real-world applications, a project like Spring AI is going to start solving a lot of these complicated problems for you, like how do I get an output and parse it into a type? How do I talk to a vector database? How do I embed documents into a vector database? So Spring AI makes a lot of that stuff easy. So to answer your question, I'm not sure what Python libraries you're trying to use in your Java project and for what reason. Because at the end of the day, if we're just consuming this data, I don't know what projects out there would be very useful to me.
If you're comfortable using LangChain, think Spring AI. Spring AI can replace LangChain, and I think that the Spring AI interface is much better, but I'm biased. Okay, but if you've got other Python libraries, we get to also work with global 2,000 customers, and they're running these Python workloads using the NumPys and Torch and all that kind of stuff. And one of these interesting things that we can do is we can use GraalVM along with GraalPy. We can go and turn that set of Python libraries, the Python interpreted Python, and we can deliver that as a native image, native code with the Polyglot API, and we can consume that straight from our Java code. But Spring AI doesn't need to be involved. I can call that function that's calling all of those Python libraries that you're used to, and you can do that, yes. And here's a little repository that shows an example of not only doing it, but also doing it with a build pack. So you can deliver a native image that's Java, that's calling native Python, and you can deliver that to production. So yes, and if you've got more questions, you know how to get a hold of us. You can do this, but I'll tell you this. Things that we were building even 4 years ago, using those Python libraries that have been around for a decade or more, things that we were doing with those libraries are even simpler today because of Spring AI and this new generation of LLMs. So all of the work, and I'm going to give my favorite example, we've talked about it here before, is the room clean? I can take a picture and I can ask the LLM, is this room clean? 4 years ago, what I had to do was take pictures of the room in both clean and unclean, and I had to classify those things into clean or not clean. And then I generated the model that I would ask, with my Python code. But today, I don't have to train any, I don't have to give any set. I can take a picture of the room behind me, and I can say, hey, Lava, a model that's available through Ollama, I can say, Lava, is this room clean or not? There is tons of workloads running in production today built on these Python models that could be replaced with what we have available in the open source LLMs with a few lines of code using Spring AI. There are thousands, millions, I don't know how many. There are a lot of workloads that could be replaced with faster, more elegant, more secure, production-ready code without the need to continuously train those models on new data. The sun is shining in the room differently. I have to retrain the model on that. Not today, not anymore. I have that in these models.
And if you want to dig into this a little bit further, that is the difference between machine learning, which is supervised learning, and generative AI using like LLMs, which is unsupervised learning, like, right? Like we are not giving it inputs or labeling all these inputs and then asking it to classify something. We're just feeding it a bunch of data and letting it kind of figure it out on its own. So cool. Well, DaShaun, this has been a fun episode.
I mean,
had a lot of fun doing this.
there's no way that we're out of time. This has gone too fast, and it always happens. That's why these are my favorite episodes, because
I know.
we talk and all of the things that we've learned come out. We pointed out some shortcuts, some things to look out for, on the defaults. But it is so easy. We're just scratching the surface, and it's okay to take that snapshot. Take the snapshot version down, explore the new features that are available with the Ollama APIs. Yeah, and give us feedback. Like, it's a great time to be a Spring developer.
All right, cool. So yeah, that was getting started with Ollama and Spring. If you have some questions about that, you know how to get a hold of us. Go ahead and reach out to us and get us those questions.
I'm gonna make one more ask. If you've got something interesting that an interesting use case that you've either done with Spring AI or you're looking to do, you've got something that you think would be interesting and it's going to fit, let us know. Right?
Absolutely.
The possibilities are endless. We're just scratching the surface. And I'm very curious to hear, what are you taking to production? If you're using Spring AI, or if you're thinking about using Spring AI and going to production, let us know. We're very interested. Maybe we bring you on to one of our shows, do a little video and share it with the world. Because it's exciting times.
Yeah, that'd be great. Well, hey, this was a lot of fun. If you enjoyed this conversation, tell a friend, spread the word about us. We like talking to each other, but we also like talking to you. So we want you guys to be here every week, Monday from 1 to 2 Eastern. Catch the replay, catch us on a podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. And hey, if you found value in this, just do a little favor, write us a little review and say, hey, those Dan and DaShaun, they're fun people to listen to, and I learned something today. So go ahead and check
learned. Like, this is great. Like, good times. Thank you, Daniel. Cool. Thank you specifically for all the great questions. It was fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
It was fun.
Cool. Well, we will get some more shows scheduled. If you have some interesting topics that you'd like us to cover, again, reach out and let us know, and we'd be happy to cover those. With that, we will see you in the next one. Thanks, everyone.